Morning, everybody, and welcome to another wonderful business spotlight interview. And we've got Ian from Maber Architects. Now, I interviewed Ian a couple of years ago, and I gave him a call this week actually, and said, "Oh, what's been happening?" And lots of different things, both personally and also business, has actually happened over the last couple of years. So, um, Ian, tell us the story of what's been happening.
All right, thank you, Tim. Good to see you again. And I suppose that we have made some changes to our business. We're a bunch of architects. There's about 70 of us across 4 offices across the UK, up and down the M1 corridor predominantly. Um, and I celebrated my 25th year in the business this year, so I've seen the business grow. I've grown with it. And I'm very fond of it and what we do and the people. And so we've made some changes in the business as well. But as you did mention, I've had some uh, a not too straightforward journey over the past couple of years as well. And those two things, yeah, it never rains but pours, doesn't it? So those two things have sort of happened together. Um, So I suppose for me personally, if we go back to February 2024, I was sitting in our Leicester office having a conversation with one of my colleagues and a whole bunch of very colourful triangles started flashing on the right hand side of my vision, which was quite disorientating and odd. I carried on with the meeting, tried to ignore it, thought it'd probably go away. Um, and it did subside for a little bit. I went and sat back down in the office, jumped on another Zoom call with another colleague, and I was handing over a project. So as I was talking about the project, these flashing triangles came back to the point where I really couldn't see the screen. And then a very strange thing happened, which is that every time I said a word, um, a sheet of A4 paper, or about 8 sheets deep, appeared on the top right hand side of my vision. And all the potential meanings of that word in relation to the conversation I was having appeared on the page. And I remember your brain works in sort of weird ways and sort of overdrive. I read all this stuff. Thought, that's actually good stuff. That's all relevant. And then on the right hand side of that, another sheet of pages, all the potential future meanings of that word, and on the left hand side, all the previous meanings of that word in relation to this project. So I ended up talking slower and slower and taking more time between words because there was so much information squirting into my brain. And that went on for probably about 30 seconds to a minute. And in the end, I just said to my colleague on the call, I really can't, I'm really sorry, I can't carry on with this call. I don't know what's wrong. I had wired headphones on and I started to turn away from the computer. And that was the last time I had control over my body. And my body got into a loop. I could turn my head to the right, and then it would go back to the right, then it would go back to the, and of course, sitting in an office chair, as soon as you do that, your whole body starts to rotate. So I was gently spinning, and the cord was getting tighter and tighter. And a colleague sitting opposite me spotted that this was a bit unusual and came over and said, "Are you all right?" and knelt down in front of me. And that's the last thing I remember. Everything just went light grey, and I had a seizure and just dropped in the office and. For about 3 or 4 minutes, a tonic-clonic seizure. An ambulance was called. I came round after about 20 minutes. Taken to hospital. Initially, they thought I'd had a stroke. It wasn't a stroke at all. It turned out to be a brain tumour. And I remember they found this with the CT scanner, and someone came to talk to me and said, "We think you've got a brain tumour. We'll know more when we do an MRI in a few days. Could be a secondary cancer. We'll get back to you." And so for 3 days, I lay in a stroke ward. Um, what do you do? What do you think at that sort of, at that sort of moment? And so I suppose what you do is you do a lot of planning. You do a lot of thinking about, well, priorities, right? They start to become a lot more important. And so I thought obviously about the kids and my wife and family, and what would I want for them if I had weeks or months or years to live? And this was very much compounded by the fact that in 2018, a colleague of ours had collapsed in our Nottingham office with a seizure, subsequently diagnosed a brain tumor, and sadly she died about 8 weeks into lockdown. So we couldn't even attend the funeral because at that time it was all just like 5 people were allowed and you had to watch on video. So of course my thoughts and everybody else's thoughts went there. And So one of the things I thought about the business, we'd been talking for a while about a transition to becoming an employee-owned business. Quite a while. There were five of us as shareholders and also were five directors. And we'd been kicking around the what next. One of the directors wanted to retire, a couple of them wanted to sort of semi-retire. And we'd looked at traditional MBO and employee ownership and whatever. And I know that one of the things in that, when I was lying in that hospital bed, I really resolved on behalf of the business was I really want to get the employee ownership done. I really want to transition us to an employee owned business. And it felt like a really important, it wasn't about architectural design awards or, legacy in that sense. What felt important in terms of legacy at that point was actually the sort of social justice piece, the value of the employees jointly, 70 of my colleagues are owning this thing and being on this journey together. So that's why I kind of resolved that through a business sense. Um, it turned out it wasn't a secondary cancer, which is terrific. And the tumor was sitting on my left occipital lobe, which is where all the information is processed for the right hand side of your vision. So in both eyes, I don't know why, it crosses over to the left hand side of your brain, and that's where it gets processed. And so for the next few months, I continued having a lot of hallucinations and some seizures, some really weird stuff going on the right hand side of my vision, because basically the tumor was pressing on the surface of the brain and just like if your shoes don't fit very well and you get a blister, edema, the fluid under the skin to protect it, the brain does the same thing. So it was bleeding and fluid was collecting there, and the pressure was increasing on the occipital lobe, because the tumor was pressing down on it. We had a date for surgery in July that got cancelled just before, about 72 hours before, which was a bit of a shame. We got another date for surgery in October. I had surgery to remove the tumor. And But actually, I'm skipping slightly ahead. Let me just fill in the business bit. After I got back from the hospital, and got back to work, uh, after the initial diagnosis, I rang my practice manager and I said, Craig, I want you to book a party. And he said, why are we booking a party? I said, book us a party in June to celebrate being 100% employee owned business. He said, but we're not an employee owned business. I said, yeah, but we will be. And then I went and told the other directors I've booked a party to celebrate being an employee owned business on the 28th of June. So we better get the deal done by then, haven't we? And it's not a straightforward and easy thing. There's a lot of different interests in play, a lot of conversations and debates. I absolutely love the five of us working as a team over the past, I don't know, 15 or more years. And but a group like that can get bogged down in details. And when we were having these conversations to try and thrash out the details with the lawyers and the accountants or whatever to get this deal done, one of them would turn to the other and go, "Yeah, but we better resolve this issue because we're having a party on the 28th of June." And this power of the party, I can only commend the power of the party. It's there's a management technique in there somewhere. Anyway, so we got the employee ownership deal done. we were an employee ownership, 100% EO business by the 28th of June. And we also transitioned. So at the same period between my diagnosis, my first seizure, and the surgery, we also, of the five of us, four of the guys stepped down as directors of the business. I remained, and then two people who'd been in the business for a while stepped up to become directors. So there's now three of us that run the business. So I suppose there was quite a lot going on during that summer. And yeah, we got to October. I had the surgery, pop a chunk off the back of your skull, dig around, scoop it out. I'd nicknamed the tumor Brian, Brian tumor, because he wasn't very good at spelling. He wasn't very bright. And in fact, the surgeon even wrote that on him when they sent him off for pathology, Brian tumor. The surgeon told me beforehand he was going to. He said, they'll think I've lost it, but it's funny. So unfortunately, when I came round, the surgery went on a bit longer than had been anticipated. The blood supply to the surface of my brain was impeded for about 4 hours. And the problem with that is that, as my surgeon explained to me afterwards, it's a bit like if you lie on your arm for, say, 10 minutes, you'll get pins and needles. But give it a good shake and it comes back. If you were to lie on the arm and cut the blood supply off for 10 days, you'd probably lose the arm. So somewhere in that journey, when the blood supply has been cut off for a sufficient amount of time, it won't re-establish. The tissue starts to die, and you've had it. So the very, very fine capillaries on the surface of the brain, they got squashed during the surgery. The blood supply was cut off to them. And so when I came around after the surgery, the right-hand side of my vision didn't work. So it's called homonymous hemianopia. And basically, there's two versions. One is the right-hand side of your vision in both eyes is just blank. Passive hemianopia. Mine was active hemianopia, which means that my brain was making up everything on the right-hand side of my vision. So both eyes. It's nothing to do with the eyes. The eyes are fine, but it's the brain itself processing the information. And what that meant was any unique object on the right-hand side of my vision, I couldn't see. So if I looked at you and then looked slightly to your right, you would just wink out of existence. You just wouldn't exist. I could make cars disappear. I could make buildings disappear. You just look slightly to the left of them and they just pop out of existence. But it's not blank. It's filled. The brain fills it in with like a sort of bad AI. So if you've got a wall that starts on one side of the vision, on the left-hand side, and carries on onto the right, it's still there, but the brain's making it up. But if there's, let's say, a sign on that wall, you can't see it because that's a unique object that the brain isn't collecting from the left-hand side and replicating. Lampposts are a nightmare if you can't see them when you're trying to walk down the road. They were a bane for several months. Or just shoulder barging people in the street and not meaning to. You look like what was that? What was that video? A pop video for Bittersweet Symphony. Was that it? When they were walking down the street,
Yeah,
shoulder
the
barging
burn.
people all the time. It was I was that guy. I didn't mean to be. In fact, walking at all was quite hard because you don't realise how much your peripheral vision is informing where the ground is. And it's amazing when you think about walking. Really, your foot just comes down, kisses the ground, and springs off again, and gets it right step after step. But if you can't see where the ground is on the right hand side, it was like that side was drunk, or like it was like when you walk upstairs at night in the dark and you think there's one more step than there is, and you go out onto the landing, sort of flapping about. It was just like that. After about 3 months, the bottom half of my vision returned, which is great. The blood flow re-established to some parts of the surface of the brain, which is really good. The swelling had gone down sufficiently for that. Since then, nothing has changed. So the top quadrant, the top right hand side of my vision is still absolutely fictitious, completely made up, to the point where if I look at you now and I look at your right eye, your left eye is just papered over with skin. It doesn't exist. In fact, your glasses don't exist either. It's like you've got a monocle, which actually, Tim, is very fetching. I think you should probably consider that as a look, maybe a cravat, and really set it off. But because my brain knows that a head is roughly that shape, you've got the rest of your head you'll be thankful for. But because your eye and your glass, the frame of your glasses is a unique object, it just doesn't exist, which makes reading and writing really, really difficult, because you read by pattern recognition. You don't read every letter of a word, and whole words seldom fit into my vision now. Um, so that was quite a big change. I used to read quite a lot. It's now a real act of will to chew through text, and quite exhausting. Thankfully, my computer can talk to me and I can talk to it, and that's a terrific adaptation. Um, and I suppose for the first 10 days after the surgery, um, they put me on some quite strong steroids to try and reduce the swelling in the brain. The side effect with them is that they keep you awake, so they stop you sleeping. So you're absolutely knackered after brain surgery, and yet you can't sleep. So maybe an hour or two a night, and so there's a lot of lying awake staring at the ceiling. So audio books were an absolute lifesaver, and I did a lot of thinking during that time. But a really interesting journey that I went on with an audio book called Awareness by a guy called Anthony DeMello, who is a Jesuit priest and practicing psychologist. I think he was working in the 80s. Um, and he was really talking about a psychological idea that was around, well, it's quite ancient, but it was certainly a big, people like Carl Jung and Sigmund Freud liked it a lot at the beginning of the 20th century, which is this idea of the I observing the me. And you can do this really easily, really simply. You can sit and you can start to become, first of all, spend the first 30 seconds being a better observer. So look at a wall. What color is it? What color is it really? Where's the shadow on it? Where's the light on it? Where's that coming from? And then start observing your own body, where you're contacting the chair. Are there air currents over your skin? What temperature is it? Really noticing actually that your connection with everything that you're touching, clothes, body, what, and then start to turn that inwards and observe your own emotional landscape. How am I feeling? Am I happy? Am I sad? Am I frustrated? Am I depressed? What's going on? And and then start observing that to the point where you can work out, well, okay, why am I feeling those things? Why if I'm feeling depressed or angry or sad, why am I doing that? And if you accept that, Freud said all our emotions come down to either love or fear. So what is it I'm afraid of that's making me sad or angry or depressed or whatever? And then we can properly think about that thing, look at that thing coldly, analytically, as if it was any other problem. And what it does is it breaks the power that your emotions have over you. So instead of being a cork bobbing on an ocean, just like I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm up, I'm down, actually you just start hovering over the ocean and noticing where the cork is. Your emotions are still real. Well, I don't know why it's doing that, sorry. Your emotions are still real, they're still happening to you, but now I'm observing them rather than being a slave to them. My mum used to say emotions are a wonderful servant and a terrible master. And recently at one of my sons, I have three boys, two of them got married this year. Recently at one of their weddings, I had the joy of telling him and his new wife, love is not primarily an emotion, right? Every rom-com and uh, every love song that you've ever heard has lied to you. Love is not primarily an emotion; it's an act of will. It's a decision, and you can prove that to yourself because you can love your children even when you don't like them very much. Right? It's not dependent on your emotional state towards them. You know that you still love them, even though, grr, right now, I wish you hadn't done that. Um, so being free from emotions ruling us is seems like a really important thing, but actually, in an age of Instagram and TikTok and the dopamine hit of doom scrolling and everything else, we've got locked into a cycle of of just seeking out those emotional hits and highs. And we can do the same thing in business all the time. If I'm not feeling good about this, it must be wrong. Or the saddest thing I ever think in relationships, people leaving their spouse because you don't make me happy anymore. Wow. Like, who promised you that? How dare you expect another human being to be responsible for your happiness? That's kind of mental. Um, but we kind of get locked into this emotional thing. So this book really helped me try and detach a little bit and actually start to think about, okay, I can't see properly anymore. There are things I used to be able to do. I can't drive anymore, which is really frustrating. If anyone wants to make me a cheeky offer on a 5 litre V8, I'm open to a conversation. But I think the when you experience trauma, hardship, particularly when it wasn't expected or you didn't go looking for it. I went into that surgery being able to see fine. I came out partially sighted. Um, you can choose to crawl into a hole and cry about it, or something else, and the dusting yourself off and saying, okay, it's not what I would have chosen, it's not what I was looking for, it's not what I wanted, but this is the reality. These are the cards on the table. And your job then is to play them, isn't it? Not wish for what might have been. So I had about 4.5 months off recovering, and came back to work in February. Most of that was fatigue. It was just exhausting. I it Brain surgery is just wow. It really does astonishingly take it out of you. Um, and Yeah, since then we've been back in the saddle. We've been the EO is employee ownership is going really really well. We have a panel, an employee advisory panel. So people have voted their colleagues onto that. They talk to the rest of the business. They talk to us as directors. They have little projects they'll kind of work on and think about. Take stuff from suggestions and work them up into workable, implementable ideas, and then we'll discuss as directors with them. We have a new trust board, which we're now accountable to as directors, which I'm a huge fan of. I think accountability is like really critical for us as human beings. If you didn't think you were accountable for any of your actions, if you thought you could do whatever you want without challenge, would you be the best version of yourself or the worst version of yourself? I mean, straight away you'd become pretty awful. And I think we need not just you, Tim,
No.
as human beings, right? Absolute power corrupts absolutely, and that is so true. So being accountable to the trust board, we set objectives, we tell them what we're going to do, we run the business on behalf of all employees. That doesn't mean a soft touch or a lifestyle business, but during that time we also got B Corp accreditation. So we've changed the articles of association of the business to be a triple bottom line. So we now report against people, planet, and profit. So we have a triple bottom line that we report to our trust board. Um, uh, and yeah, overall things are going well. We look set to have quite a decent year. The um, tides have been a bit choppy in our industry over the past 12 months. The Building Safety Act post Grenfell was implemented, and that puts new duties on people who own high risk buildings, so anything over about 6 stories, and on designers as well. The regulator initially was not well resourced, or the process was not well described. We had to make up quite a lot of our own processes and systems to work with that, to to serve our clients. We chose to run towards the problem rather than run away from it, because in a service sector business, what use are you if you're not solving your clients' problems? And there's a new approval process in place. Gateway 2 is sort of a pre-construction approval, and we were really pleased to be the first practice in the country to get a Gateway 2 approval. And typically we're getting our Gateway 2 approvals in about half the time that the average is taking, which we're also pleased about. Again, that was due to a lot of really good work and really good effort from within my team to really take the legislation apart, work out what is the exam question, what are they asking, how can we make it easy for them to give us the right answer, and then creating information specifically for that purpose rather than just bundling up all of the information and sending it to them and hoping they'll somehow decode it. So that's been quite a big success. That's done well for us over the past few months, and continues to be a growth sector. But again, I think it's about it's the same. It's not that dissimilar to waking up partially sighted. You can either cry about it. Oh no, the legislation's changed. Oh no, headwinds of threatening our industry or our business. Or you can say, okay, that's the reality. I can't change an act of parliament. So what are we going to do about it? How are we going to, we might have to shift quite a bit to react and respond to this and do it really, really well. But yeah, we've sort of grabbed hold of that. And then interestingly, I think finally, because you really need me to shut up, your brain is making stuff up all the time as well, right? It's not just my brain. My brain does it 24/7. On the top right hand side of my vision, I've seen butterflies land on my arm, weird birds flying into my vision. I saw a hand groping for me once coming out of the top. It's not really there. My brain just thinks like, it's a bit quiet in here, I'll just make something up. Geometric patterns really carefully drawn really slowly in neon lines all over that side of my vision, that sort of stuff. But your brain's making stuff up all the time, and you can prove this to yourself really simply. So if you go and stand in front of a mirror and you look into your left eye, look at your left eyeball, and then look at your right eyeball, then look at your left eyeball, then look at your right eyeball, you will never see your eyes moving. It's impossible, because during that transit you are blind. It's called a saccade, and your brain literally makes up information for that split second where otherwise it would go black and come back again. Your brain makes up information to keep you happy so that you don't feel blind. And it's every time you transit, if you look from one side of your desk to another, or if you look from one object to another, every time there's that rapid transit, that saccade, your brain is making stuff up. It's partly why if you go looking for someone in a crowd and you're just going like that, you'll never, if they're standing in front of you, you'll never see them, because it's not like a video camera where it's a continuous feed during that transit. There's literally nothing. Your brain's making it up. And you can prove this to yourself if you then do the same thing on your phone, on the forward-facing camera on your phone. Because if you do that, you will see your eyeballs moving. And that's because there's a more than 20 millisecond delay in the video being processed in the phone and being put onto the screen. So you're seeing what has just happened rather than what is happening. In a mirror, of course, it's the speed of light. So, it's as it happens. But yeah, the brain's an amazing thing. But your brain's making stuff up. Everybody's brain's making stuff up. Don't trust it.
It's really fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. I mean, I'm sure people will look at that and go, the story of resilience, both in terms of personal and business, is unbelievable, and I'm sure people will learn from it. But the other thing is, the biggest learning, always set a date for a party. And if that's
The
the
power of
case,
the party.
you will actually get there.
There's a book in there somewhere, Tim. The Power of the Party.
Bower of parties.
Oh, Tim Roberts. I can see it now. It's yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's if
Um,
I have the patience to write it. So, Ian, thank you so much for sharing that, and it was absolutely fascinating. Thanks for your time.
Pleasure.